Hello, welcome. We have John Hoffman today with GSMA, and we're going to be talking a little bit about, we're working on a case study for CISO on the production of the event. So I want to give the audience a little bit of background on GSMA. Welcome, John. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us and sharing your experience with the industry. So, tell us a little bit about GSMA. It's a trade body that represents more than 1,200 companies across the mobile ecosystem. So, tell us a little bit about the value of Mobile World Congress to the industry.
Well, MWC is our three-pronged attack, which runs in Barcelona, Shanghai, as well as LA, to convene the industry. And we bring together all parts of the ecosystem, from the mobile operators to all of our enterprise companies around the world that are actively involved in telecommunications, specifically mobile, but all forms of telecommunications. And as such, as the industry body that works with the ecosystem, we work across many fronts, including the convening side, but our industry side is as we all know, pretty active in the engagement of regulation and how the mobile ecosystem can expand. So that's kind of a high level overview of the GSMA. We've been around for more than 30 years and hope to be here into the future and be relevant.
Yeah. And so what's been the impact of COVID on the mobile industry? Tell us, give us some context so that we can see what that's like.
Well, COVID hit us probably, hard and fast. In February of 2020, we were the first event to actually recognize the potential impact of COVID, and that brought us to the realization that that mobility, the ability to connect remotely, was probably going to have success during the fight of the pandemic, and the last 15 months have very much played that out. I guess I would turn that question around and ask it back to you. What would your life have been like without the ability to conduct your business remotely?
Yeah.
And and for many people, is only enabled via the mobile internet. So connectivity around the world has been very much augmented, in fact, by COVID, and
Uh-huh.
we'll continue to see that into the future. Mobile operators have responded, I think, in a very professional and well-structured manner. We've had the capacity to deal with COVID, and frankly, everything from education to the way of conducting business over these past 15 months has been very much reliant on mobility.
Yeah. So most of the companies in the ecosystem, their sales are up typically, or, you know,
Well, I think it's pretty variable.
yeah.
In terms of the mobile operators, they have seen a greater reliance on their customers on their mobile use. Some parts of probably the ecosystem, including the on-site activities that some companies do, probably less reliant on the effects of COVID. But overall, we've survived COVID so far, I think, quite well, and
Yeah.
we're looking, as many of the world is, looking forward to getting back into a post-pandemic world.
Yeah. So do you have any stats or anything that you can share? I understand, GSMA puts together kind of a state of the industry report each year. Is that coming out at the event?
Yes, I believe we will have our state of the industry report prepared for the event in Barcelona. And well, we're recording early, so I can't share any of the details yet, but
Darn.
you'll get them soon.
Okay, great. Well, I look forward to seeing those. So I know I was going to ask you about this, being you were one of the first shows to cancel, especially, first global big show. And there was a lot of, I'm sure it was not an easy decision on your part, but now, you look back in hindsight and, it looks like it was the correct one. Will you give us some context about, give us some insight into that, and then how you got from there to being able to open now? There hasn't been much in Barcelona since before your event last year, right? So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the decision was complicated, but actually quite simple. So our greatest asset of bringing more than 110,000 people together from all over the world, we draw people from more than 200 countries and territories around the world together for for 1 week here in Barcelona. Uh, that asset became our biggest liability. We if you can think back to early February of 2020, we had heard about something, and it wasn't called COVID at that time. It was called coronavirus. Um, we're not medical experts, but we did recognize that we had a responsibility to not only our attendees, everyone that participated, but to the community. And our fear was that if someone came to the event and became ill or infected others, to then go back home to spread and we didn't know at that time that we were going to have a pandemic. If you can think back, this was not
Right.
pandemic, it was pre-pandemic. And so that was the driving factor, and it had zero relations, the decision, to do with financials. It had nothing to do with anything other than the fear of making or allowing people to get sick and go home
Mhm.
and infect others. I said in an interview a couple of days after, that I thought history would prove us correct, and unfortunately, that has been the case.
Yeah.
Our thoughts and prayers go out to everyone that's been impacted by COVID. I mean, it has hit hard. It has hit globally, and while we're, I think, on the downhill side of it, we're going to all look back to the COVID era as something that was kind of game changing for all of us and impactful for all of us.
Yeah. So have you been able to host any of your other events, like the Shanghai event, or and then, how did you get to where you're one of the first shows to open up in Barcelona? So I mean, I'm curious how you got from, there from, last February to now. So what have you been doing?
So post February, we, like many of others around the world, like all others around the world, canceled all of our in-person events. And so we
Okay.
started in June of last year with a virtual program for Shanghai. We used it as a launching pad. We've always done some virtual programs, virtual programming of our events. But last year we were thrown into a situation where everything went online, and so we learned, like others did, what was successful and what was less than successful. I think we've probably walked away with some conclusions. Monetizing online is hard. It's much harder. I think that networking, the ability to actually interact in a personal way is more complicated. Um, the exhibition floor, whatever term you want to use, doesn't do well virtually. You can do some things, but it's not quite the same as just walking around and rocking up to a stand and talking. Um, the conference program, you can do quite well virtually. That it works. It's more of a broadcast as opposed to an interactive session. You can do it. You can have breakout rooms. So we learned a lot. We conducted programs throughout the year. More than, I think, 35,000 attendees participated in our online events.
That's great.
But then we started back in person with what COVID kind of gave us, which was China. And in February of 21, we launched our first in-person event. Almost 20,000 people attended in person, and then we broadcasted as well. So we were a hybrid event, and in China, eyeballs are vast, and we had more than 1 million people view some components of that program. So we learned from it. We did it safely, we did it securely, and frankly, we were quite happy with the reaction that we saw in China, and that gave us then the ability to build on those successes here in Barcelona. But it is different. I mean,
Yeah.
starting as being one of the first again, it's complicated, and yet we're very excited about the future. So in-person events are starting to come back.
Yeah, yeah, it is exciting. It is exciting, and it's so nice that we're here as opposed to last year. Yeah, you're
Mhm.
right. Mobile World Congress has a big impact on the city of Barcelona. 492 million euros is what I saw reported, and generates 14,100 part-time jobs. So, talk about the value, and then maybe I'm assuming maybe I shouldn't assume that you worked with the city and the venue to really, work closely with them in the last, several months to make sure that Barcelona was going to open, that you should move forward with your plans, and that the venue is going to be ready. So let's talk about that aspect.
So a couple of points there. We do work very closely. The host city parties, which is comprised of Fira de Barcelona, the venue, as well as the Barcelona City Council, the local government, the Catalan government, the regional government, and then the national government in Madrid. We all work closely together and have something called the Mobile World Capital, a public-private partnership that was established in 2012 to turn MWC from a week-long event into a year-round engagement. And it was really critical for us to give back to the community, to give back so that mobility was at the core for 1 week, but then it had tentacles that would spawn new business ventures, the legacy, if you will, of technology here in the region, and that's been very successful. So, with regard to the economic impact,
Yeah.
MWC over the years has generated more than 4 billion euros of economic impact. And our last event in 2019 was close to a half a billion euros. So it has a big component for the local community. And two things that are important to communities, well, three actually: recognition. So we shine the spotlight on Barcelona, and that's good. But we generate economic impact, and we generate jobs. Now, that is part of what we think is important for us to have a partnership. It is not a one way, we're just here and then out. And that's been cultivated over the years, as I said, with the Mobile World Capital, and that legacy lives on. That then worked extremely well when we decided to get back into action. So we went to our partners and said, okay, how can we do this? First, do you want us to do it? And if we do it, how do we do it safely? And we've always been focused on safety and security. And now we throw in the COVID issue, and it's been quite an endeavor to get people comfortable with the idea of bringing international participants to Barcelona. And you have to cycle back 6, 8, 9 months when we first talked about this. COVID was running rampant, and yet you're trying to project months into the future. What will the community think?
Mhm.
What will the health authorities allow us to do? And we couldn't have done that without a very strong partnership that existed for many, many years.
Yeah. Um, and I understand what you worked with. Did you work with the government or local authorities in terms of like the visas, allowing some international visas for people to come through for the show? I mean, that's unusual, right?
It
That's
is.
different, I guess.
It is. The European Union, Spain in particular, has been very welcoming to all of our participants over the years. It's one of the locations where everyone can participate. Well, when COVID came, and it's still here, it's still around. We had to have the ability for folks from all over the world to come, and there were restrictions. There are some restrictions that are currently exist, although they're being relaxed even as we speak. But the government of Spain did in fact utilize an existing rule on the books that allowed our participants to be admitted as highly skilled workers into Spain.
Yeah.
So, we didn't ask for any favors. We asked for them to use some legislation that was already in existence. And it goes back to our partnership. If we hadn't had that partnership and that history together, I'm sure that we wouldn't have had that result.
Yeah. I've kind of heard that theme over and over. And what I was trying to get at too was, the value of working with, I mean, I think COVID has shown that we really do, in the trade show industry, need to work on advocacy and those partnerships with, state, with local, county, state, whatever, regional governments, is critical for us.
I don't think you could understate the importance of that.
Yeah.
we we don't do this on our own, and I don't think any organizer really does at any scale anyway. And so we rely on the authorities to help us with police protection, with fire protection, obviously with all of our visa processes that we require to get people into the country. But it's the little things. It is the working relationships that allowed us to develop a health plan that frankly they had never approved before. So it is extensive, it is
Yeah.
over the top, it is COVID proof, if you will. If there's anything, and we're not health experts, and we're not trying to do it ourselves. We're relying on the health agencies to guide us, and that public-private partnership, I think, has worked extremely well.
Great. Well, let's talk at a high level about some of the health and safety measures that you have. There is an extensive list. I mean, I was just at a show in Las Vegas last week at World of Concrete, and that was the first show I'd been to without a mask. And things are coming down here, but it's different in Spain. So let's talk a little bit about what the current state is, and a high level of some of the health and safety measures.
So the vaccination process is variable around the world, and we couldn't rely on vaccines. And so ours is reliant on testing. Everyone that participates, that comes into the country, has to have a negative test before they arrive. Anyone that goes to our event has to have a negative test. We'll have a testing agency, our partner on site. We have a full lab kind of set up. They conduct all of the testing. We're running antigen tests. And everyone will be required to have an antigen test every 72 hours.
Okay.
We recognize that some people will probably test positive, and when they do, they will then be given a PCR test to confirm that is not a false negative. And the health authorities are overseeing and running the entire process. We're event organizers, we're a trade industry association. We are not health professionals. And so then if we do have a positive case, the health authorities then guide us. Is it symptomatic? Is it asymptomatic? Are they in distress? Do they have to have hospitalization? We have worked with them on a full list of protocols. Once you then, get into the venue, we'll enforce social distancing. Everyone will, in fact, wear a mask, even inside. So it is still a requirement, and and we'll be touchless. There will be no badging. Everything will be electronic. We are relying, we are a technology business, and we are relying on technology to make the experience work and work better. We'll use facial recognition for those that that want to use that in order to get in, and the list is rather extensive. Everything from the HVAC system, which has been modified to provide more fresh air than we've ever had before to meet and exceed all of the local guidelines. So a plan that has been worked for more than 6 months, and one that we feel very confident in.
Yeah, you do have an extensive health and safety protocols, and we'll put a link to that at the end or in the show notes as well. And we'll be discussing those in the case study. So, what are you hearing from exhibitors and attendees in the run up to the event? Now we're a little more than a week away, and so what's the vibe, and what are people talking about?
It's variable. So, some countries you're not able to get out to travel. While that list is relatively small to get into Spain, you have companies that are still not traveling, and we respect that. We know that we're not going to have 100,000 people this year. We know that we're not going to have 2,500 companies participating. That's okay. We'll get back into business with those that are able and willing to participate. And so the vibe from those folks is actually, I think, quite interesting. They want to get back in person. They realize the value of being in person. They could call it in. and we're going to have an extensive, online component. They could have participated remotely, but many people want to get back to the face-to-face part of business, and that's what we're opening up to do. So it is anticipation. I think there's some intrepidation as well for those that have not taken an international trip, or even maybe a domestic trip
Yeah.
for 12, 15 months. It's a little different, and it's not as easy as it has been in the past, but it's getting, I've been now to Barcelona 3 times over the past 3 months.
Okay.
Every trip, it's getting easier. And by that, I mean the rules are being understood. The rules are changing literally every day.
Yeah.
And communicating those rules to the myriad of people that you run into on an international trip is extensive. So you've got to have everyone on the same page. Once you get here, I'm very confident that our rules and our processes, while different maybe than you know recent events, um, they're quite simple. They're actually, fairly common sense, and we will make no exceptions. But I have a vaccine. It doesn't matter.
You still
But
have
I
to have
was
a test.
tested. I was
Yeah.
tested last week. It doesn't matter. We're going to be very, very strict. We are setting sort of a model for at least how to work in today's environment. Now, next month it'll be different, and as you
Yeah.
say, in Vegas it's different. But here in Europe today, we are setting the gold standard.
Yeah. I'm sure from a budget standpoint, that's got to be not an extensive but on your budget.
It's not trivial. Let's
Yeah.
say that. It's not
Yeah.
trivial.
So what are your expectations in terms of attendance? And you should know the exhibitor side right now, pretty much, right? So how many exhibitors and net square footage, and kind of compare that. I know, this your event is one of the most, influential and recognized brands in the world in terms of, branding and trade shows in globally. So tell us a little bit about what your expectations are and what they typically are.
So we'll probably be about a third,
Okay.
and you say that I should be able to tell you the numbers. I wish that I could.
Okay.
They are literally changing every day. So
Oh,
some companies saying, yes, I'm coming. Then they're going, well, I don't know. I'll go virtual instead. Some that are virtual saying, you know what, we're going to send our local team instead. So we'll have about 1,000 on the show floor,
okay.
about 1,000 companies. So roughly a third of what we typically get. 110,000 will probably be in the 25, 30, 35,000 range. Again, we don't know. It's going to be more regionalized. It's much easier for last minute decisions being made by Europeans, Southern Europeans, Spaniards, which traditionally make up the largest attendance category anyway. Um, so those are kind of the numbers. But
Right.
frankly, our models that throw them away. We could in the past, tell you how many people, where they were coming from, and how long they were going to stay, what day they were coming, when they were leaving. Um, those models don't exist anymore.
Right.
They exist, but they're useless in today's world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to tell. And I know from the shows that I've written about here, the run up on the attendance side really did at the very end, go up depending on, vaccinations and, are you, and yeah, I know you're using digital badges. So are you requiring everybody to pre-register for the show
Yes,
yeah,
everyone will pre-register, and we'll do checks in the background, and then when you get here, we've made the entire process touchless. I mean, so I guess this is good for our industry. We've been using facial recognition for several years. It's a throughput issue. You try to get 100,000 people using facial recognition has
right.
been tough. We can't mandate it. We won't mandate it. You still want to go through a manual process, we will. But if you want to go through the fast line, facial recognition will move you right through. And it's different than the airline. The airline, when I got on the plane leaving a couple of days ago, they used facial recognition to allow me on the plane. But it was, one person, step up, pull your mask down, stand still. They'll do my picture. We don't use that. It's walking through at a normal pace. We have to allow, facial recognition to work in a high capacity manner. and we'll do that. And I think that those kinds of attributes, which are being a bit forced on us right now by COVID,
Yeah.
will have legacy. I don't think we'll ever
Yeah.
go back to it the
Yeah.
way of the past.
Yeah,
I hope not.
it'll be interesting. Yes, because I have not been to a show that has used facial recognition, so I'm interested to see that in action. And yes, there are some things like digital badges and that are pretty much new here in the U.S. I mean, that's not a thing that typically happens. So. And the data but the data that you can get from that is extremely interesting and potentially helpful for producing your event.
Very much. I've wanted to move to the little sticky badge that says "Hello, my name is," and you just write
Yeah,
your name. That's great. You need to know that, but
right.
you shouldn't use that kind. You shouldn't use technology, outdated technology that's been around forever, in, in an environment where technology is your core.
Yeah.
And frankly, COVID has pushed us to adopt things that we wanted to adopt, but maybe have had reluctance based upon user demand. Now the users are forced to.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. And that will be one of the silver linings of the pandemic. It has accelerated the pace of change,
Correct.
particularly in the trade show industry. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And what exhibitors and attendees can accept and be okay with. Okay, so what were some of the obstacles, and what are some of the current challenges that you're facing a week before the event?
Fear.
Yeah,
Fear.
yeah,
And it's not fear, it's fear of the unknown, right? For many people, they're venturing out for the first time, and they don't quite know what to expect. We've been an organizer for years, and we have fairly high volumes, and thank you for saying it's one of the widely recognized programs. We've always been proud of innovation, and frankly, we've tried to be on the cutting edge, as opposed to the bloody edge. Well, last year we were on the bloody edge with the first cancellation, and probably this year we're on the bloody edge with one of the first, to go back into business.
right.
That makes it exciting. Sometimes, a bit too exciting, but it's something that we embrace because this show will be a success at 9 a.m. on Monday, the 28th of June, when the doors open. It doesn't matter how many people come. It doesn't matter, what the experience is, as long as no one gets sick, no one gets hurt, and we're very confident that will, in fact, happen. We have to get back into business. And I've had many organizers contact me, and say, we're pulling for you. And we appreciate that. We want to show the way. We want to show that in-person events can be done safely and securely, and can be done in the tail ending of the COVID era and into the post-COVID era. I'm not sure we're ever going to get rid of COVID. I'm not that smart, but it doesn't matter, because whether we get rid of it entirely or we just learn to live with it, it's the same thing. And we want to show the way.
Yeah. Well, you are brave though, and it does take courage to go forward in this age. And there have only been a handful, and you're really the first one in Europe. So, but we have to get started somewhere. And that's kind of the feel I get too. So, what are you most looking forward to at the event?
I'm actually looking forward to walking around and virtually shaking hands with those pioneers, the ones that found the opportunity to participate, and to thank them, because they are showing others the way. And will there be exciting announcements? I'm sure that there will be. Will we have great topics of conversation about the future, and even looking back and how our industry, how our ecosystem has dealt with COVID? I'm sure that will
Right.
happen as well. But it is really, I think, most gratifying to work on reopening, and just
Yeah.
reopening and saying, you know what, COVID, you kicked us pretty hard. You kicked us really hard, but we're not down, we're not out, we're back.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, great. Well, thank you so much for your time today, John. And I look forward to seeing you in Barcelona soon.
We look forward to welcoming you next week.